Welcome to the Boundless Bible. My name is David Shapiro.
Hey, I'm Javi Marquez.
And I'm Jason Holloway.
Welcome back to the Boundless Bible, guys. How's it going?
Doing well.
What's going on?
Nothing.
Javi's got that actor smile.
I am excited about kind of getting into today. This is something I think that hits home for everybody. I know it hits home for me. And I'm going to kind of set up a story by saying, the other day I was helping somebody and, anything I did for them, they were just kind of complaining. And they complained when they first saw me and I started to help them. And they complained afterwards and then they kept going. And later on, they kept texting and, they were just being really negative and kind of grumbling throughout the day. And really, it wasn't anything too serious. It was something that to me is not worth the grumbling. But it made me kind of think of what happened when we look at the Israelites when they were in the Exodus, when God released them from bondage. And the first thing they did was grumble.
That they did.
So you guys, I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you have somebody who has grumbled quite a bit and you're looking at them going, what are you grumbling for?
As you were saying that, I was actually thinking that you might have been talking about me. I might have been that person who was grumbling the whole time. You guys know I just got through this surgery that I had to go through, and I feel like I've spent the last 2 weeks grumbling. So we'll talk about that. But I know what it feels like to have a blessing bestowed upon you and to still be frustrated by it because not everything that comes with it is golden. So. What about you, Javi?
No, I can relate to that. I think, what was it, about like 2 weeks ago, I actually shared that in my men's group about like, man, I've been complaining a lot. I don't know what it is. And I was just checking myself. I realized that I'm really just agitated with a lot of things that fine, it might be a bother, but it was no point for me to really dwell on. No point for me to continue to just kind of let it sour my day kind of thing, if I could say that in those kind of words. But, I do complain. I do catch myself really grumbling at times and I hate it. But one thing I've noticed for myself is I'm able to catch it early on, I think. At least my wife tells me, so I'm able to catch it early on.
Oh boy.
That's it. So let's start the story. So you're mostly talking about Exodus here,
so
right?
This is in Exodus. This is when God has already come with the plagues and the last plague happens, the Passover, and now the Israelites are released from Egypt and they go and they now cross the Red Sea. God splits the Red Sea. And literally 3 days after all of these miracles, the Israelites start to grumble. And this is in Exodus 15:24. So the people grumbled against Moses saying, "What are we to drink?" So 3 days later, they're thirsty. And instead of realizing that God will provide for them, they start to grumble. And they're grumbling towards Moses. And it's not even they're grumbling against Moses. So they're upset that they were brought out into the wilderness and they start to complain. That's the first time, only 3 days after seeing all the miracles. And it's funny because I think about it all the time. I go, man, I wouldn't have grumbled like that. Like you're with God right now.
Right.
And the truth is, yes, I would have. I definitely would have grumbled as well.
Yeah.
I think we all catch ourselves at those moments.
Which makes me think,
it is hard.
Like, when they say grumbling, is it our modern day grumbling? Was it something further than that? Were they losing faith in those grumbling? Were they complaining about something further than just going, "Oh my God, it's hot out here. How can you take us? Why will you take us away from Egypt? It's just so hot out here," type of thing. You know what I'm saying?
It's interesting you asked that because I was going to get to this later, but the Hebrew word that's used right now for grumbling is loon. And it does mean to complain. There is a translation that does say complain, but it also means stuck in a stubborn mindset or lodging and remaining somewhere. So they are lodging in this stubborn mindset that they have. And that's the other definition of the word, which brings a lot of meaning now.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's interesting too that they didn't just grumble and complain, and shortly after they're going to start. We're talking about people who are going to start building an idol after 40 days of Moses being on a mountain. So it might
Right.
have started as grumblings, but grumblings always turn into, turning around the other way and walking away from things too, right? Like that's just the beginning of it. But it's interesting because, we say I wouldn't grumble either, but especially because look, those guys saw a cloud of fire that came after them and came with them. Like they literally were led out of Egypt by a tower of fire or something
Yeah,
like
the
that. I mean, it's like
tornado
this
of yeah.
the tornado of fire. Like you see the tornado of fire that's literally leading you, and a couple days later you're like, that guy, that God? Like, what's wrong with those people? And the first time you read it, we very quickly in this conversation put ourselves in their position and saw it very empathetically. Like, yeah, we know that we grumble, but a lot of times you read the Bible and they're separate from us. It's another story. You're reading about somebody else and you're just going, look at all these
Yeah.
grumblers. Look at all these people who are
Yeah,
complaining. How can they do that? God led them out. That's so absurd. And then you look around and you go, how did they put the wrong milk in my latte? And you're like, wait a second, hold on. And you got to kind of see yourself in the mix. And I think that's what we're talking about today, right? It's like, how can we also in our lives have those mountaintop moments, those come to the altar moments, those Jesus grabs you by the shoulder in a service and says, I'm talking to you, pay attention. And then, that Sunday morning and Tuesday morning, you're going, oh man, I got a flat tire and the world's against me. Like how do you go from one to the other? It's just how we're built, right?
100%.
Think about you.
And when you
Put yourself in their shoes, right? Like,
yeah,
you had a God that just opened up the Red Sea for you. You
Yeah.
had a God that just showed all these
didn't even say
different
that.
was it plagues, right?
Mhm.
And then he got me out here and he's not leading me forward, or I'm hungry, or it's hot, right? He could help me out through these things, and he's
that's fair
not.
too.
So maybe that's where that's a complaint. Maybe they're going, wait, you're the all God of this. You can't just, I don't know, transport me
Yeah.
to where you need me to go. Why can't you just,
Right.
give me a nice little ride and ride off rather than like, I got to walk there kind of thing,
Yeah. I
So
God
maybe
who,
that's perspective.
Right. I thought you were the God who did all these crazy things, and look what you did to get me out of here, and now you're putting it on me. Now I'm the one who has to go, through all this suffering and this hardship to figure out where I'm going. And yeah, I never thought of that. I never thought of that. Yeah,
Think
I mean,
about that
maybe.
modern day, right? When you are like complaining or stuff like that, it's like I think for me, when I think about when I'm complaining, it's because I know what it maybe could be or how it was, and being that it's not that way, it's uncomfortable, or it's like, wait a minute, this is supposed to go out the way I thought it was gonna go, so
Yeah.
it's not. So I'm complaining now that it should have went the way it went. Does that make sense? So like, right, I'm
Yeah,
making
totally.
a right or something like that. Like, wait, I had the right of way. Why are you cutting me off? Like, and I'm complaining about this, and to me, it should have been the way it should have been. And I'm thinking for them, they're thinking like, well, you're the God of that took me out of there, out of Egypt,
Yeah.
out of slavery for 400 years. You part of the Red Sea. I don't know, provide some food for us.
Yeah.
that
Well, he did.
that and the fact
He
that
did eventually, yeah.
well, you have to remember that even when God came to Moses and told Moses to go to the people and tell them that God is going to release them, he said, go to the elders. You have to remember, these are people that did not know God. They spent 400 years
Yeah.
in captivity with the Egyptians. So they're looking at multiple gods. They don't really know this God. And so this God is leading them out. And they're looking at going, okay, well, this God maybe did whatever he could. We're out. And now what? You left us here to die. What was the purpose of that? Because they're still getting to know him. And I it's not a reason.
Great
It's not
point.
a way to allow somebody to grumble, but I do feel like I'm going to give them a little bit of leeway and go, hey, yeah, this guy just performed a lot of miracles for you, but you've seen that for 400 years, magicians and workers of magic and
Right.
and the Egyptians thanking the gods for all of that. So they're just starting to get to know this God, and I think he allows it, which is why, yes, they grumble about water. God gives them water.
He gives him water.
And they start
Yeah.
to grumble about food, and God gives them manna. But what's interesting is if you start to look at, the grumblings, Exodus 17:3, but my people were thirsty and they grumbled against Moses. And then you have in Numbers 11:1, they tell about the story again. They said, now the people complained about their hardships in their hearing of the Lord, and it was when to them they were angered and they were aroused. So these people were complaining about the hardships. But when you look
Yeah.
at Exodus 16:2-3, in the desert, the whole community grumbled. If only we had died by the Lord's hand in Egypt, where we sat around pots of meat. they're complaining about Moses the whole time, and then all of a sudden they flip it to
Yeah.
God and they go, "No, we're complaining to you. It would have been better if you just left us to die in Egypt as slaves, because at
Yeah.
least we had food there."
At least we had food. Yeah.
Wow.
It's incredible.
I mean, I understand that. I know what I'm like when I'm hungry too. you know, you know, there's. I think we have to. That's one of those times I can actually relate. I'm like, you're hungry. You were eating well. Your life out of it. It just tells you how much as humans we are willing to put up with in the name of comfort. Right? I mean, look, they were.
Yeah.
That's about as simple as it gets, right? They would rather be slaves and know where they were sleeping at night and the food that they were getting than have to go out on this journey.
Yep.
That is, I never really thought about the
Yeah.
comfort part of it, but yes, they are definitely putting comfort above all else.
Maybe not comfort. Maybe it's familiarity.
Familiarity.
Right? It's like
Familiarity, right?
This is something that I'm used to.
Well,
After
the
a
term
while,
"the devil you know," right? People stick with the devil you know,
there you go.
right? It's like
Right,
this, and
right.
this is
I
what
wouldn't
they were
say
doing. They were
that
sticking.
term, but
Oh, yeah, I mean, but this is what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're sticking with the devil they know. It's familiar to them. It's comfortable to them. Change is not
even
good for
slavery,
people.
right? They know what to expect in a sense, right? So this is us speaking from this perspective, right? We weren't there, but going through that motion, and I can imagine. I think about myself, when God pushes me to do something outside of my comfort zone, outside of things that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah.
Just taking risks is hard. It's hard. It's uncomfortable. It's when you do it, it's uncomfortable. Shedding of your skin, right? It's just hard for you to do. And I think that's what we see here.
You actually nailed exactly what we actually talked about this in the men's group. I'm remembering now. We talked about this about a year and a half ago. Like, I think, David, we brought this up, the idea that this whole story, right? But where I went with that at that time, and I'm just kind of recalling it now, is that this is a bigger story than the soon-to-be Israel, people of Israel. This is a story about change in general. This is a human nature story about what it's like when we're called to change. If I have an addiction to something and I need to stop that, I know I have to do it. I know it's going to be hard. And I know it's going to be better for me. And yet I'm probably going to suffer through the whole process. But that suffering leads me to my promised land. There's the long version of it, right? If I'm addicted, and I'm not saying, I'm saying anything. If I'm addicted to certain food, or if I'm addicted to my social media or any of those things, I know that I have to separate from the thing that is in my past, the things that are comfortable to me, the things that I know, the comforts and the familiarities of which I have grown accustomed, and I have to be able to go through some wilderness for some time.
Yep.
And I have to be able to be uncomfortable, and I have to feel that need of I'm thirsty, and I have to feel that need of I'm starving, and why aren't you doing this for me? Why aren't you fixing this problem for me? And that's just not the way it works. God's not the magic maker who just one day just takes all your problems away. He gives you the path to taking your problems away. And that's what I love about the story now, is when I look at the story, I see it much more like this neural progression, or this conscious progression from one part of your life, which is not good, to a part of your life, which will be better if you follow God. Sorry, that was long.
Yeah, it's not only that, but it's like what we see here. It's again another story saying, you going through this, you're going to persevere. You're going to become different.
Yeah.
You're going to become a nation. Not only that, you're going to do it, and I'm going to get the glory, not you. So I think as we see that when we do our, when we go through our life and God pushes us, it's not only for good. It's always for good. But it's also for him to get the glory. It's not through our strength, it's through his strength. And we see that you're going through the desert, for them to make it out anywhere is through God's, provision and protection.
I also think it's a bit of a wake-up call for us readers. And the reason being is, and this is a speculation, but, these Israelites, they don't know this God, like I said, and they've seen him do what? Really harsh things to the Egyptians. And it wasn't to them, but they saw it. And now they're following this God who has done nothing but really hard things to watch. They're in the desert, alone, in the quiet. They're hungry. They're thirsty. And what we're doing as the readers is going, how dare you grumble at God? And I'm going, this story is also for us, the reader, to go, you have no idea what somebody has gone through. And we're so quick to judge people and go, how are you acting this way? Meanwhile, like you said, there are people who don't get the right milk in their latte and they're throwing a fit because this
Totally.
is for us, the reader.
But not only that, they're following a God they don't know, but they're also following a leader that is not really that great. I mean, he really wasn't. I mean, he terrible at his speech
He
and
wasn't known
speaking.
to be great. Yeah, he
He
wasn't
wasn't
known
known
yet to be great. Yes.
Not yet. Yeah, yeah. But at the time when this is happening, he was
Yes.
still struggling. He needed Aaron to do a lot of his speaking and help, which is good. It's fine. But at the moment, you're looking at Moses and going, "Where are we going next? Smart guy. Look at us. Now we're in the desert." Type of thing. I make fun of it only because it's
That's exactly what they
I'm
did.
thinking
So
myself in
human.
that. I'm thinking myself in that.
Well, that's what it is. It's humanizing.
In that shoes.
Yeah,
Right?
these are humans
Right,
who,
humanizing
who
the
are
fact
who are
that's-
having human emotions, and us as humans are looking back at them having human emotions, going, "How dare you? God is with you. I wish. You know what I would do? You know how many times I heard people say, you know what I would do if I was there and God was there, and the amount of faith I would have to watch that." And I'm going, no, you wouldn't, because you're a human, and
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah.
this story is about humans.
David, I was going to ask you. So, like, even before they left on the Exodus, they needed to rile them up, like put them together and go, "Hey, we're gonna do this. We're gonna leave together," right? And they were still like reluctant, right? A lot of them maybe went back, right? They didn't just jump to the opportunity to go, "Let's go, Moses." Right?
No,
were
they.
kinda
I mean,
wanted to stay.
you have to remember that they felt as though God was on their side. He said, "On your way out, you're going to go and ask for money and gold and all of that from the Egyptians," and they gave it to them. So I think the leaving part felt great. It's, hey, we are, and that
Yeah.
also is that
Yeah,
human
right.
nature. You have that moment of excitement of like, I'm
It always
finally
does feel
getting
great
what I
when you're
want.
setting off for your new
That's
adventure.
it.
Yeah.
It's I wished for this and I prayed for this and I got it. And then you go, beware what you wish for, because it's always going to come with a hardship. And I think with them, I'm getting released and I'm getting all this money and this is going to be fantastic. And then it's, whoa, there's a big river in the way. And then it gets parted and you cross it. You go, okay, now there's a big desert and there's no water and there's no food and there's no shelter. And it's just thing after thing after thing.
Ongoing.
And they got exactly.
Ongoing.
And that lesson to this day, we still have not learned well.
Man, that's so. Look, you were talking about that, and I'm sitting here thinking, like, I used addiction as the example because it's just one of the common ones. But think about if you decide to play a sport, right, and you think like, oh, I'm gonna do the like I'm gonna get really good at it, and then like in 6 months I'm never gonna have to practice again. No, you're gonna practice for the rest of your life, and you're gonna have hard practices and hard days and hard losses, and like you don't just wake up one day and everything gets easier. If you're studying something, you just don't wake up one day and know everything. Like it's literally like the most universal quality of life, of human life, is that there is constant up and back and up and back. And we are so quick to want to believe that this is the moment where it never goes back. This is the moment where I'm at the high and I'm never going down, and I'm never, and it's so indicative of so much that we do, because it's exactly what we do. I mean, how many days do you have, like, a great week and then you're surprised that your next week isn't great? Why would we be surprised by that? We should expect that. That's literally the most natural thing to happen next. Is we have a couple great weeks, we're going to have a couple bad weeks. Going to have a couple great weeks, going to have a couple bad weeks. And like, it's just part of the process, and yet we don't accept it.
No, and what's also very human-like is, they are grumbling. They feel like this is the worst. I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, so I'd rather have died in Egypt. And so this is that point where they're going, I don't like this at all. I would have rather gone there. And then what happens is, God sends snakes that start biting them and poisoning them.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, wait a minute, never mind. And then God says, okay, put this symbol of a snake in the air, let them look at it. And they're like, okay, I'll look. I'm with you again, God. And it's really quick for you to go back and forth to go, whoa, I thought this was bad, but man, this can get really bad.
It could be worse.
And then right afterwards, you start to grumble all over again.
All over again. And they just keep doing the same thing. And it's like, you're reading the story from an outsider. Again, I'm going to repeat myself because I think it's so important. From an outsider, you read this and you look at those people and you can't understand why they're doing it. It's like, you guys are going to the promised land. You guys have been, taken out of slavery. You guys are following, who's obviously they didn't know it, but that's kind of my point. Is like, we know the reader knows the future,
Yes.
so it's hard to see where they were in that moment. And if we could only read our own stories, we would trust them more. And what we have to do, since we can't read our own stories, is trust that God has already read our story and know that God has already told us that the story is going to be good. So we need to read our own lives the way that we read those people's lives. We should be looking at ourselves right now going, why am I doing this? Why am I not just going home and hanging out with my family and enjoying myself? Why am I so bent out of shape over this thing going on? Because God's already got it.
I love that.
Yeah, when you grumble and when you complain, it's a lack of trust, like you're saying, Jason. And
It is.
your lack of trust, but also you're also saying to God that I don't know you'll be able to provide. You'll be able to like
Yeah.
get me out of here. What I was trying to figure out was trust. It was like trust and the lack of being grateful for the things that He blessed you with.
Yeah.
Which is usually I feel like for me it's that, right, the first world problems kind of thing, right? It's the whole really you look back, and that's how I get out of it. For me, it's like, wait a minute, God, you blessed me so much. You have showed up
Yeah.
in my life so many times. Why am I grumbling? Why am I complaining? I'm gonna give it up to you. I'm just gonna give it up to you. I need to let it go. And then
Yeah.
5 minutes later, I grumble again.
Tell you what.
And then,
What's really cool
Yeah.
is, Jason, what you said is something that I've constantly said, which is the Bible. You know how it ends. You know how the story ends. It's exactly what you said.
Right.
So we can look at it and go, how come you're acting this way? Because we know they're going to be fine. Meanwhile, in our own lives, we don't know the ending. So along the way, we grumble. What's really, really cool about God is you can complain to God. You can yell at God.
Yeah, exactly.
You can get angry at God, and He's still providing. While they're grumbling, He wasn't saying, well, you're thirsty. I'm not giving you anything now. You're complaining. No, He gave them the water. He gave them the food. He gave them shelter. He gave them protection. It was amazing how He kept providing for them through it. So for us today to go, we're not going to know the ending of our story, and it's not all going to be pretty, but He is there providing for us every step of the way.
Right.
There's
You know what? Yeah, go ahead, Tommy.
Yeah. No, like I said, there's like a good, I forgot who said the joke. It was like, these Israelites, they come out of Egypt, God provides, opens the Red Sea, for them. They complain, they ask for water. Boom, God gives them water. They ask for food, but, they still complain. God gives them, they ask for food. God gives them food. He complains, and after 40 years of complaining, even God had enough. And because at the truth, that's what happened, right? Like after a while, I think a lot of them didn't make it to the promised land. They were, a lot of them, like the earth kind of ate them, right? A hole, or opened up a hole.
The punishment from making the idol was that none of that generation would make it into the promised land.
Right.
Including Moses, who ended up, he didn't,
Right.
not from the idol, but from striking the rock versus speaking to it when he disobeyed God. But God, yes.
Well, he was putting himself in God's position,
Correct.
right? That's what he was doing. I mean, in that moment, I actually just talked to my wife about that the other day. I mean, the reason was because he put himself in the position of God instead of, it wasn't that he did something wrong. It's that he particularly went and did what God said, I can do for you. He said, I'm going to do it instead. And so putting himself forward made him, as if he was trying to put his own divinity or deityness into it. So yeah, that's an important note. He didn't just say,
no, but
you did a
even
bad
that,
thing, Moses, you don't get the promised land.
But even that, God still provided. He still had the water come out. It's incredible, even at that very moment. So I just love what you said, Jason. It's just one of those things where, yes, we don't know the ending of our story, and it is sometimes hard to trust God. We grumble through it. God is okay with the grumbling, but He wasn't okay when the grumbling turned to idol worship and, well, now you can't handle this. That's when it went too far. And
he wasn't okay when Moses decided to take it into his own
Correct.
hands and not use, and you try to take it under his own strength and not under God's
Correct.
strength. And those are important notes, because for us, it's not about gratitude practices. That's not what this is about. This is about understanding that gratitude is towards God. This is not about, being happy that the universe is providing. It's understanding that God provided. It's not being happy that you made a paycheck this week, which got it going. It's that God provided the job to give you the paycheck to do these things. And when you keep your eyes centered on God first, that's where you're glorifying God, and that's where you're living correctly. I mean, you're putting the onus of power and blessing and goodness on the one it really comes from.
Yep. And what I love is that God wants to work with us. So He's not saying, I will, make you transform from here to the promised land. No, you're going to still walk through it. You're going to still go through some things. We're working together. And I actually think that's the most
Yeah,
beautiful part of God is you don't have somebody
it is.
doing it for you. You're working together with God, which is just an amazing thought on its own.
Yeah. Javi, I loved you said, they asked for water, they got it. They asked for food and they got it. They should have asked for an Uber. They could have just got right in. I
They
mean,
could
if
have
they're
got
getting
there,
everything
man.
anyway, you gotta know how to see. This is about specific prayers, right? Know what you're praying for. That way you can get what
Oh,
you're asking for.
specific. Wow.
Specific
There you
prayers,
go.
right? Now,
That's
look, the other,
funny.
the other, the other thing I think is interesting, guys, is that you mentioned earlier that they were in the desert for 40 years, right? And that generation didn't make it. That generation didn't make it. So sometimes we're going through the suffering, but we're going to, I think most parents know this feeling that sometimes you
Oh,
have to
wow.
suffer and it may not be for your best interest. It may be for the best
Interesting.
interest of who's coming next. And you know what? Let's not even use parents. Let's use spiritual parents. Sometimes, you might be discipling somebody or walking through somebody to their faith, and it's not you that's going to benefit. In fact, you might suffer a little bit for their benefit. I know, David, you particularly suffer a lot for people because if somebody calls, you answer any time of day or night, and that kind of sacrifice, may not be you who wins, but you're doing it in God's name, and the people next of kin or the next of the next in spiritual line are going to benefit, and I think that's really beautiful as well.
Yeah, I think if you just put things in perspective all the time and remember that, whose we are and what purpose we have in this world, I think that,
Exactly.
the grumbling will never stop. I'm an admitted grumbler. I grumble constantly about different things. And sometimes it might not be as it might not be the wrong milk because I take black coffee, but it could be
Same.
it could be things that somebody from the outside will look in and go, that is so small. Why are you grumbling
For
at
sure.
that? And I look at other people the same way. And the truth of the matter is that the grumbling has nothing to do with the item. It's a heart issue at that moment. It is my heart is not in the right place, whether it's not on
Yeah.
God, it's not on the person behind the counter. Listen, the person who made my coffee could have been having a really horrible day. I don't know anything about what they're going through. Something's on their mind. They put the wrong milk in. I'm getting mad at them. Meanwhile, it really is a
Yeah.
heart issue. Is the wrong milk gonna kill me unless I'm allergic? No. But I think when you start looking at these stories, it really, like I said, it's for the reader to look in and go, is this me? Is even a little bit of this me? And how do I change
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Or how do I see the bigger picture also, right? Like if you're not able to change it, which hopefully you can see it in bigger picture and say, this is a small part of a much bigger scheme. And it's also natural. It's just natural to suffer a bit. Like it's not every day is a vacation day. Not every day is Christmas Day. It's like I don't know. That's what I'm taking away from this conversation. Like it's like every time I get to this grumbly place, I'm like surprised. Like why, how everything was going so well. Why now? And instead of saying why now, just to go because that's how it works. That's
Yeah.
that's where the growth happens. All of every one of my bad days has made every one of my good days better. Every one of my struggle situations has made me stronger. And by the way, that's what this story did for the soon to be Israelites, right? I mean, this
Yeah.
is this is what they did. They grew, they understood, they learned how to trust in God. They learned who this God really was, the one that you said they didn't know. They learned that he provides. They learned that he elects people to lead them, right? They learned who he is through his actions, and they couldn't have done that without the struggle. If they had been taken directly from Egypt, gotten that Uber, and ended up in the Promised Land. By the way, they got to win battles because of him as well. They had to fight at Jericho. Was it Jericho they had to fight at
The
Yeah.
where
Canaanites.
the
Yep.
walls came down?
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
the
one of them.
Canaanites. I
Yeah.
mean, so over those 40 years, they learned who this God is, that he's strong, that he's powerful, that he wants to, all this stuff. And so, I don't know. I is where we learn. And this
Yeah.
story
It's
is
it's
this
it's tough when you're going through it, but
totally.
yeah, perspective. I like that you guys said the perspective. I think it was you, Jason, saying the perspective of having that God will provide, God is with you, or God gave you this, right? Everything you have already. So when you're leading from that angle, you're leading towards the world with that angle, that perspective of God giving me this. So whenever you lose it, whenever it's not going your way, you cannot go, well, this is mine. This is, no, no, God gave it to me. He can take it away. And when you have that attitude, you could overcome obstacles, and I think that's a good perspective to have.
Yeah.
I agree. It's something we all have to work on, I think.
Yeah. I think for me, my grumbling needs to turn more into prayer. When I am looking for something and I feel ungrateful, I need to pray for my heart and also pray for what I want versus just grumbling for it. It kind of reminds me a little bit of, a kid having a temper tantrum, like not just saying, hey, listen, I'd really like this toy, but starting to whine and fall down and, throw his fist in the air.
Right.
Meanwhile, God, the Father is looking, going, really, you're not getting it that way. That's not how it's going to work.
Yeah.
But when you humbly, kneel before the Lord and just ask, and, he will provide. And it might not be in the time that we want it. It might not be in the nature that we want it, but he's there and he knows what we need and he will provide. And I'm just, like I said, I'm really blessed by this story. I know that it is very confusing to see why anybody would grumble while God is doing these amazing miracles. But the more I look at it, the more I go, man, they have me written all over them. And I do this all the time.
Oh, totally. Guys, this was fun, as always, no shocker. More things came up than we anticipated, I know. I assume the same for you guys, but we just want to say thank you to anybody who's listening or watching now. We appreciate your time, your consideration. We know there's lots of other things you could be reading or listening or watching, and you chose us, so we very much appreciate that. So make sure to, if you wouldn't mind, we'd love some likes, comments, shares, follows, you name all the social things. Reviews are awesome, helps get us up in the algos, and get to see more people to share it as well. So we appreciate your time, and we thank you for coming, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.
See ya.
See you guys.